Okay, go ahead.
All right, welcome. Thank you for showing up. My name's John Schmidt. I'm the Wildland Urban Interface Specialist for the Southwest area, uh, for the Department of Natural Resources, Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. I'll let Chris introduce.
Chris Peterson, I work for the Division of Forestry. I'm a wildland urban interface technician. I work for the state for about 13 years now, doing fuels reduction work and also wildfire. Happy to be here. It's good to see all you.
Yeah, it's always a question on how many people will show up in the past. Wildfire hasn't been as it is. I mean, it has, but not to the point that we're losing thousands of houses. So it's always nice to have folks understand that we need to be aware of it, be prepared for it, and by all means, be safe with it. Again, the Southwest, well, not get that close. The Southwest area is comprised of 5 counties. We can go to the next slide. Oh, excuse me, yeah, housekeeping. Obviously, one way in, one way out. As someone mentioned, it's a lot like our roads here. So that is the exit and the housekeeping. The other thing is I want to get through the presentation as quickly as possible. It's not meant to be I don't know what the word would be. It's not meant to be threatening or anything like that. I'm going to show you some slides of a. Oh, yeah, that's some. I'm going to show you some slides from a recent fire that we've had here at New Harmony, and most people have seen the pictures and they know the drill. They've seen, you've all seen Pacific Palisades, Lahaina, Valley Fire, where it goes house to house to house. That is a concern in some areas here in southern Utah. I think we have enough space, clean space, and hopefully we won't see that. But yeah, going on to the next slide, Jim.
Should be coming.
Okay. Well, a little delay. But the slides aren't meant to, I tell folks that I preach gloom and doom. I show up at both meetings and, the world's going to burn. And that's not meant to do that. It's more, these are areas that concern us, right? We always, at least in the fire world, we have a saying that, what keeps you up at night? And that goes for structure fires and our own wildfire. One of the areas was obviously New Harmony. We've been affected by fire several times. Mill Flat is a good example of where that fire came downhill at a rapid pace. So we're always thinking about, okay, where are we going to work next, right? As I drive down I-15, one thing stands out to me, and that is the Blackridge area, and that's Cola Branches and Blackridge subdivision. So it's time to address it. We kind of anticipated this, right? We knew that we needed to address fuels and fire preparedness early on. In fact, several years ago, we put in for a national grant. The grant comes from the U.S. Forest Service, state and private forestry. So they have a different division for dealing with private lands adjacent to the Forest Service. And they give out, it's a competitive grant. We put in for the Blackridge area to be able to treat not only your around your home's defensible space, but also look at landscape level treatments, right? So one addresses the landscape, addresses the larger uninterrupted fuel base that we have. So this is church property. The LDS church property, and early on, just after the Blue Springs fire, we started talking to those folks, the resource end of the church property management, and this was a concern. It was uninterrupted, solid, contiguous fuel loading, if you will, and that showed us, you know, we have no chance of stopping the wildfires. Just like Blue Springs, if you're familiar with Blue Springs in 2005, came up along the east slope of the mountains into New Harmony. So a lot of work was done. You see the greener areas, the broken up areas, the BLM did a lot of that work. We were able to go in and treat some of these openings that we created. And it just all it does is give us a chance to put a brake on the fire or direct it away from properties. So a bunch of that work was done. Yeah, we go next. And on private land, you're going to look at that and you're going to say, holy cows, I mean, that's pretty thin. The left side of this slide is a wildfire perimeter, right? So the fire burnt into this area that was thin, and it put it on the ground. The ash pits that you see amongst those trees that survived, that was from us burning the slash the prior winter. So we went in, thinned it, piled those branches. In the wintertime, burnt those piles, and we never know where a fire is going to come from or go to. Really, we project that a little bit, but and then the New Harmony fire burnt up right to that fuel break. We'll see that that property a little bit here in a minute. Okay. So a lot of work was done. That outlines some of the work. The colored polygons up there along the side, that work was done to protect a lot of those homes on that side of that subdivision. This is Harmony, let's see, phase one of New Harmony Ranches. Or not Harmony Ranches, but New Harmony subdivision. The other polygon down here was completed at the same time, and then you can see the ash pits from the units that we put in. Pretty drastic, no doubt. You'll see the BLM do a lot of that work on I-15, on the east side of I-15 as you drive north. It is impactful, but it also increases the diversity in the ground cover. Wildlife benefits from it, obviously, grazing benefits from it, but we benefit tremendously. So if we did have a fire, fires do come from the north too, but if we do have a fire, we can connect the dots with aerial resources or dozers or handline a lot easier than than we could, if that work wasn't done. Not saying it's the only way to do it. You can be very effective on your own property, defensible space that way. Okay. New Harmony Fire. So this landowner, we worked with that landowner for years ahead of that fire being a factor. It's the house you see further south on Bumblebee Ridge there, sits up on that point. That house was vinyl sided when the current or the one owner that we worked with bought it. He removed the vinyl siding and put up stucco, knowing that vinyl siding's pretty marginal whether it can stand to keep fire out of the structure. And then he also had us come down and thin the stand just to the south, right? So that was thinned down quite a ways. And his preparedness, if you see the shed just to the north of his property, there's a pond there. We can go to the next slide, I think. He put in a pond that you could draft out of, right? So that engine is drafting out of that in response to the wildfire that went around his house. They were able to quickly refuel, not refuel, but re-water and keep attacking any hot spots around the home. Those are just different things. He knew he lived in a bad spot. He knew the fire ran uphill. He had contiguous fuel loading down below. That's why he did the thinning, and also changed or home hardened his structure to take that vinyl siding off. And go next. Okay. Yeah, chipping.
I'm going to spell John for a second. Talk about everybody's favorite thing, chipping. So John mentioned a little bit about home hardening, how important it is, around your structure, what your structure is built out of. But one of the other factors, he did mention, how that last home that he showed, how we've done a bunch of thinning, the homeowner done a bunch of thinning. Fuels mitigation is a huge part of survivable space for your homes during an event of a wildfire. And one way to mitigate the fuels is through chipping. And I know that there's probably some of you in here that have been involved with that. We've been chipping down in this neck of the woods for quite some time. And we try to get around 2 times a year with our chipper program. We're going to talk about grant funds here in a minute, but we do have a grant that helps us chip right now. If homeowners will cut and stack the material, we can come in later and chip it for you. We're going to have a sign-up sheet for that at the pancake breakfast, which I believe is next week. So if you're thinking you're going to do that or you have some, make sure to get on that sign-in sheet or sign-up sheet so that we can find you and get your stuff chipped. At the back table, there's a pamphlet, and we also have one that we can show maybe later on the screen, but it goes through what we need in order to chip it, how we need it stacked, what kind of material we'll chip, and so on that way. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as the chipping goes. It's pretty straightforward. Homeowners, stack it the correct way, and then we'll come in and clean it up for you. The chips will stay on site. We don't haul any of that off. It's green material, and we don't want big tree length stuff. We want it down to like 4-foot lengths, just so the guys can manage it. They're manually feeding the chipper, so we got to have that in place. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So that chip pile that was just displayed is actually right out along this roadway right here. That's where that was stacked. And that was prior to this fire. This is, again, the New Harmony fire. This was a sad story. for the homeowner. But there's some lessons learned here, for sure. Couple of things that stand out to me are all these green trees down here. This would be the south end of the fire, so the fire burned this direction. And then obviously the foundation's over here. And then you got a shed right here that's still in place. It didn't burn down. So just want to talk for a second about what happened there. So he thinned the trees out. He did an excellent job. And that's why there still are some green trees. One of the things that burned your home down in a wildfire is the ember shower. And this particular individual had a home that was older. It was all wood, and it hadn't been upkept very well. So there was a lot of checks in the logs and in the deck, which is horrible for an ember bed. The shed right in here, you can kind of see the roof on. It was a lot newer and a lot more upkept. So the main lesson is you got to do the thinning, but you also got to harden your home. Otherwise, you can still lose it if you thin all the trees in the world, but your home is not taken care of. You're not taking those steps to prevent where the embers get. There's a chance you're still going to lose it. John, you got anything to add on this one? You worked with this individual a lot more than I did, but
yeah, he was a disabled vet. Dang it.
Okay, so we hear all sorts of different things from homeowners, like, if this all burns, we're not gonna live here anyways. And, we got insurance. If it burns, we don't care, but we came here for the trees. So we're just gonna leave it as it is. And that's totally fine. It's totally up to the landowners. We're just here to help where we can and those that want help. But one thing I did learn from here, because I helped respond to this fire, was I showed up before this was burned down, and this individual was in trying to get ready to evacuate. And he was a gun collector. And I remember, kind of shouting in the house. The doors were open. His truck was backed up to the doorway. And he answered. I went in, and he was going through his gun safes. And, just kind of picking through. And I did notice before I went into the back of the truck, that the bed of the truck was just loaded with guns across the back. But in the safes, he had them all open. He was kind of picking through, and they were still loaded. Like, it didn't look like any guns had been taken out yet. But those safes, the thing that I didn't realize, but that stuff doesn't withstand fire in the temperatures that's going to burn at overnight. All that was melted down to nothing. By the next morning, there was nothing left. Like, you couldn't even tell where the safes were. When they cleaned this up, I remember they were scraping all the lead off the foundation, and it just went into a big glob. So just awareness to those kind of things, helps you prepare. Because if you think you can just throw all your valuables in a safe, there's a good chance in this area that there's not going to be the resources to put the water on it to keep it cool enough that safe's going to make it that 30 minutes that it's rated for, or 45 minutes at the temperature that it's rated at. So I love guns, so that was sad for me too.
Yeah, it is. So kind of think back to that pile of slash, right, that they were chipping along that road. Whole bunch of his veteran buddies came and cut that, thinned those trees out. That's a tremendous amount of work. That's huge. That's the most chipping I've ever seen. And for that to happen, and again, we talk about thinning, and then, afterwards, if your home survives, you've got green trees. I mean, it's a prime example. And so it's a shame that happened that way. He got out. He got some of his guns out. Chris assisted him there. And yeah, he could go back and rebuild. I don't think he has, if I remember right, so far. But the difference between that shed and that house is like night and day. New materials versus an older cabin with really, really old deck wood that's weathered. Okay, we can go to another slide there. Okay, so I mentioned, landscape level. Thank Mike for this neat shot. When we did this treatment, we went in with equipment, mechanical equipment. We cut the trees with a feather puncher. It's a big machine that just cuts the tree off. And then we skidded those trees to central locations and then burnt those piles under conditions that we feel are safe. We know there's snow coming, low winds, as you can see. Tremendous amount of heat is sitting there waiting for the right conditions to torch off. So, you can hardly see there's a crew on the ground, and that, you can hardly see them right now, but that gives you an idea. These piles were huge. We're not looking at doing something like that here. So I know that's the assumption everybody has, that you're going to come in and clear cut. We don't have to do that. The proof was in the previous slide, right? That protected that house. The unfortunate thing is that house was so susceptible to embers that, we couldn't protect it. There weren't enough engines to put an engine at each house in an event like that. Chris and I stayed at a house previous to that, or after that house. We moved on to the next, to try and prep a house, and we stayed there probably way too late. We stayed there too long. You talk about the fire front sounds like an engine coming at you. Well, it's a black wall, and it does sound like a steam engine headed your way. We tried a lot of effort that went into protecting the house. It ended up burning anyway. So some of the fuels work, you can see some of the thinned areas around, up toward the towers. We put a fuel break on up, and then some of the work that folks did. I'll try not to. Those fuel breaks are like that one that I showed you where we burnt the piles the year before. And they worked. We're always tickled when we see fuel breaks at work. Another situation, same fire. This is just down the road from that house that burned. These guys realized that they were in a vulnerable place too, and did clear some trees below on their slope, but talk about, upslope, ember showers hitting it. Next slide. So that's right at the top of that slope. That's his side of the house. And your windows are, we all love big glass pane windows down here because of the view is so great. Luckily, by the grace of someone else almighty, that second pane did not break out there. So it was it's a thermograde window, but it took so much heat that it blew the first pane out and the second pane held. Those are things that we need to think about. You look at the vegetation clearance from around his home, it was pretty significant, right? We say 0 to 5 feet, no combustibles whatsoever. Brush, trees, bushes, 0 to 5 feet should be gravel. That keeps that heat away, and then from 5 to 30, you want to thin it out and try and break that continuity of trees and whatnot down enough that it moderates the heat hitting the house. Prime example of proactive landowner, and you see that house in the middle. And then out from that house, he did the thinning. We chipped a bunch of work there. And then we came in and put the fuel break just to the left of the house here. And so that fuel break, as you can see, functioned to move that fire around his home. If that would have been solid trees right up to his home, he would have been in the same situation as the other person that we dealt with. And so then we always were concerned, well, what's the PLM doing? What's the Forest Service doing? Because if we have a wildfire that comes in from outside, that's not going to be good. Well, it isn't going to be good, but this is just proof that within the community, we can have, just like Pacific Palisades, whether it was a campfire, power line, or whatever, within the community, you can have a fire erupt in a structure, and that structure go to wildland in a quick amount of time. This was caused by a pivot wiring on a pump shorted. For whatever reason, it was left unfinished, if you will, as far as tightening up the wiring. So that shorted down there at the bottom and ran up this draw. The wind doesn't blow down here. So, it'll just stay where it's at. Now, that wind was cooking, right? It blew right across the main road in New Harmony. Okay. It's that home out on Highway 56 that we approached. We knew the ranch was surrounded by pretty hazardous fuels. The gentleman asked us to come out and do an assessment. We did it. We said what we needed to do was thin trees, and we were told by no reason whatsoever are we going to touch a tree. None. And we said, well, let us do a demo, just do a demonstration of what we talked about as far as thinning. And his wife liked that. And to this day, you can't keep her from cutting trees. So continuously thinning. So.
Who would we call to get someone to do an assessment?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yep. That's an excellent question. So the thinning can do a lot. This person lives right next to obviously the church property. So that's his view. And he was a little bit upset when we first started. And then he realized that with his binoculars and spotting scope, man, you can see a lot of deer from his property. So he has done an excellent job doing thinning down below his house and trying to secure his property as well. Okay. All right. Let's see if Chris can give me a break from this.
Yeah, so I'm just going to speak a little bit on a tool that the state has put together back in 2012. They started developing. It's a Utah Risk Assessment Portal, and there's two viewers to it. There's a basic and then a professional viewer. It holds a lot of information, but it shows risk and it shows values. And we'll get it pulled up here and just kind of scroll through it real quick. But it was revamped in 22. It takes a lot of data to keep it going, and so they have to continuously update it. But it's a pretty large view when you're looking at it. It's kind of looking at a lot of information and a lot of stuff. It's a great tool. It's just there to help people kind of see the risk and know what they're up against.
I'm working on it, Chris.
Okay.
Hang on just 1 second.
Yeah. So there's a couple ways. Once you get in there, there's an interactive map. You can zoom in and just kind of dial yourself in right to your location, or you can just put your address in and it'll take you right there. You can generate a report. The ones I've seen are pretty long. It'll give you about a 15-page report summary of risk and fire history and stuff that's happened around that location specific. So maybe
Yeah, I got it on Zoom, but I can't get it on this one. Hang on.
it's not a big deal.
We'll get to it.
If you have any questions after, it's if you just Google Utah wildfire risk assessment, it'll pull up the portal, the link to it. Click on it. It's pretty user friendly. There's a bunch of tools in there, and there's different viewers. So like if you're interested in, it has some stuff to do with water and watersheds as well. But they're right towards the bottom of the tool page. It gets kind of into the specific homeowner tools. That goes over, your survivable space. It goes over community grants, community wildfire preparedness stuff. Just some good stuff there to look at. A lot of educational material to help anybody that's interested in mitigating the risk.
The resources that are available, just from the state side, are pretty impressive. I mean, we've come a long way. I've been doing this for 20 years for the state in this area. And, the amount of information that's at our fingertips when we go to a fire, it's obviously we're carrying computers with us right now. The one I will say that's easy to remember, Ready, Set, Go. I think it's readysetgo.org, if I'm not mistaken. One that you need to pay attention to, and I'm not kidding. I call it muscle memory. In the event of a fire, everybody, your adrenaline's going, it's crazy. You're trying to gather stuff up. I would go through that drill as if fire was hitting your house right then. What can you take? What do you want to take? How you can escape safely, listening to pre-evacuation notices, and then obviously evacuation notices. I've had a gentleman spend in the Blue Springs fire, just over here in one of the subdivisions, spend time as the fire front went past his house. I met with him afterwards. He was told to evacuate. A lot of times you don't have to. Mandatory isn't exactly mandatory in some states. If you decide to stay, you're on your own. Nobody's going to come back in. Out of that subdivision, they actually cut hoses and left that close to the fire front, trying to save houses. He stayed in a concrete walkout basement, thought he was safe. He said, I will never, ever do that again. He said, the feeling that you have that basically your life is going to end is not good. So anyway, evacuate. You can replace things. You can't replace your life, right? And we're always thankful that we do evacuate folks, and that sometimes it's forceful. I hate to say that, but it is. All right, getting down to the nitty gritty. You see the area on the map that's kind of broken up. Those are BLM treatments that have been done. They take maintenance to keep them effective, and we're probably at that point with a lot of them. And then you might have seen, I don't know, Jim, with this map was sent out to everybody, but it was on
Or it was on the
or it was on the announcement. Yeah, don't get hung up on the red polygons. Those were put in. We looked at the map. and said, where can we thin without affecting maybe somebody's view from their house? And where can we do work where multiple people have skin in the game, if you will, and will contribute to a fuel break that may direct a wildfire? Nothing on there is certain or planned. Those are just some conceptual ideas. It's going to take your group to come back to us and say, yeah, we agree with some of this, or I can see where some of this might work on my property and my neighbors, their neighbors. That'd be great. We already have some on the south side. You folks that live right in here. We did some work there years ago before there were houses there. We thinned a strip in there, knowing that we needed protection from a little bit more protection from the BLM. Obviously, with houses in there, it makes it that much harder now to go back and maintain that. We are constantly in contact with the BLM folks, the fuels folks, talking to them about, hey, what's the plan for maintenance on your side of the fence? But the bigger concern is within the subdivision. So a house fire, gas grill tipping over and starting a wildfire within the subdivision, we still need to break up that contiguous fuel. So the next time you're driving down I-15, and you look over and you see that just a sea of trees and whatnot, pinyon juniper fires are usually wind-driven crown fires. Okay, so we can trim up limbs. We call it, ladder fuels. You can do all that you want. If you have a bunch of brush on the ground, that does make an effect on how the wildfire will react. But if you don't thin the trees, it goes tree top, tree top, the tree top, tree top. One of the layers that comes up in URAP on the professional side, the side that we do some planning, is crown density. So the crown is the outside, not the bole of the tree, but the outside limbs, right? Or the area that the limbs take up. And usually crown density dictates whether that's going to go tree to tree to tree to tree. Yeah, crown density is pretty tight here. New Harmony has some of the heaviest crown densities that we can even imagine. But so that's a concern in your subdivisions. Vacant lots. And that goes with Blackridge subdivision up north of out there. We're working with the Elliott Christensen on possibly doing some fuels reduction right next to that, those houses. If we don't, yeah, the result probably won't be very good, quite honestly. We're constantly reviewing where we're at, how fire's reacting, fuel moisture, and as you can tell, it's pretty low right now. And chances are we can have all the monsoons you want. It takes a while for those trees to rehydrate, if you will. So it's a particular high hazard time right now down here. Okay. Okay, that's the address for that tool that we can, all use to kind of hone in on our risk. And I would, as Chris said, strongly urge you to get familiar with it and look at what's on your property. Again, wildfire risk that Utah.gov. Okay, we're good, thanks. All right, so we're getting close to the end. 2025, this past year, this legislative session, House Bill 48 was passed. It was done to address the high-risk areas of Utah for wildfire. Casey Snyder, Representative Snyder, proposed the bill. It was an attempt to address insurance coverage, what can be done to ease that. I know everybody, at least, even I live in Cedar City on the south side, and I got letters, from insurance and the power company saying that you're in a high risk area. So it's going to be something that right now the bill was passed. So if you go to Utah legislature and look up House Bill 48, I can't really go into it. There's if you're really interested, there is a slide show that we can pull up at some point. But I'll just say that the rules for that. So the bill passed. It outlines folks that live in the high hazard WUI areas, wildland urban interface areas. Yes, you're either right in it or adjacent to those areas. And it's a matter of the rules are being written now to back up that bill. So I really, I can't talk too much about the specifics of it, but it is I shouldn't say forcing this. It's directing us in forestry, fire, and state lands to assess properties. That gets back to your question on assessments. That'll be lined out. That's being all drafted right now as far as how that's going to happen. You can request an assessment from us right now. We've always been able to do them. But this is going to be more official, and the most interesting part, it's going to assess a fee for your homes in the wildland urban interface. We don't know what that's going to be. Again, all the rules are being written on this, but it's done in order to address the cost of mostly air support. So you see these tankers dropping retard, the bigger planes, the seats are one thing. The bigger planes, that's like 200,000 a shot. And that cost has just skyrocketed, obviously. So the legislature is saying, look, the folks that are living in those beautiful areas should be the ones participating, or we should encourage folks to do everything we can to harden their home and also thin the fuels out. There's only, the fire triangle is interesting because you have oxygen on one side of the triangle, you have ignitions on the other, and then the other part of the triangle is fuels. Well, we can't do anything about the air. If we could starve the fire by taking the air away, that'd be great. That's not going to happen. Ignitions are a blown tire on I-15 sets off a wildfire up the hill and impacts these subdivisions, or lightning hits. It's hard to control any of that. But the one thing we can do is reduce fuel. That's the only thing really in that fire triangle that we can affect. So anyway, House Bill 48, it becomes effective January 1st, 2026. Preliminary maps. I tried to find our preliminary map, and it's been taken down because now the official map is being worked on. The preliminary one had about 70 to 80,000 homes in that area across Utah. For us to do, I think there were 8,000 identified in our southwest area, right? For us to do 8,000 assessments of houses is like an ungodly undertaking of work. But we'll get it done. We'll figure a way. So the idea is we go into an assessment. A homeowner may do some work, contract some work, and then we come back and do another assessment. You'll never get out of the high risk area, but there's a high, a medium high, and a low high. And so you may change that, and who knows how that's going to affect the fee, if you will. So unfortunately, that's the way we are. That's where we're at right now as far as costs. So I think there's another slide. Yeah, that's always, you gotta end on a happy face. So this is a private timberland up in Oregon or Washington. And it's a Doug First stand. And this planting crew thought they'd be funny. This is a planting crew that went in after a harvest. And they planted those larch, which are typically green. You wouldn't see that in the middle of the summer. But they turn yellow and they lose their needles and fall. So a happy forest is a healthy forest. A thin forest is where we're going. The density of these trees out here are well beyond their limit. A healthy pinyon juniper stand has about 35 trees per acre, which is pretty thin when you think about an acre of football field with 35 trees. That's a healthy stand. We're not, it varies with slope and direction of where we think fire will come. It doesn't have to be that severe, but think along those lines, we've kept fire out of these stands for so long that now we've invaded them. And so we're trying to protect our homes. I think that's it. And any questions now? I appreciate your patience for the questions because it allows us to get through it. Yeah.
Private towers, and you see there's a break there. Where is it?
So it runs along the ridge and it's around those towers. We have one that hooks into the break along the ridge. This was done, let me think back, probably 15 years ago. And our thought back 15 years was we would thin to put anywhere from 12 to 20 foot between the crowns, right? Now, because of fire behavior, and I hate to say it, but climate change and where we're at with the climate now, we're out 35 to 40 foot between crowns in order to drop fire to the ground. Okay, that's the extreme. That's the extreme. We want to do that possibly in some of those areas on that map, if we can, and then modify some of the area around your homes to save your homes, obviously. That's on the landscape level. Yeah.
I don't know if somebody's coming in, but trees actually has a fence material.
Yep.
They just leave it. It's so bad, it sounds like, I don't know how the deer are getting through there, but you can get there.
Right.
Does that have anything to do with the
John? Can you repeat her question so
Yeah,
the
so-
person back here can hear it?
Okay, up by the towers, well. We'll let you. Oh, yeah, that's good. You don't have to say.
It's right behind our house, all the way back to the towers, and there's a lot of area over there. It looks like people have cut the trees down and they're using them for fence posts and they're just leaving the mess.
Okay. Good point. And if we know about those, we can kind of investigate it because it does compromise the fuel break. The fuel break isn't that wide, as I mentioned. that was done earlier before, we started seeing, aggressive fire behavior, in recent times. There is a landowner back there we're gonna be contacting, regarding some other landscape level fields. And he did just put a fence in, so we'll just watch for that. Yeah, and see if we can take care of it. We have a crew that, Chris runs, in the summertime, and we can address individual things like that, just to maintain that field. Yeah,
What are the best hard home materials? Yes.
yeah, concrete logs. And I don't joke about it. I mean, if you look at Park City, granted, that's a different animal and all of its own. There's a house up there that has concrete logs from, I believe they came out of Montana. And in lieu of that, like, hardy board, stucco. Stucco is, good, making sure that it doesn't have anything flammable. Stucco usually has a breathing area underneath. And so that foam is susceptible to, embers. Think of, when it snows, you see snow swirling and building up. Embers will do the same thing, right? Embers are gonna swirl, build up, and build heat. If that's right underneath that stucco, it's possible, we've seen it, for that fire to get behind the stucco and get into that foam and burn. So, again, New Harmony reference. Mill flat fire came out off the hill, burned quite a few houses, and we had a seasoned firefighter go back in and check on those homes right after the fire front went through, and he found that one had bigger, thicker wood chips around their home, right up against them, and that accepted embers and started that home on fire. These guys put it out with water bottles. I mean, just happened that they were there. If they hadn't gone back and checked, we would have never seen that. And yeah, that would have been another home. Go ahead, John.
3 days, okay. Like John had mentioned, the Ready, Set, Go program. My name is John Salick. I'm on the fire board, local fire board. And John mentioned the Ready, Set, Go program. We're in the process of updating our website. We're going to have a link to that. But if you go online and check Ready, Set, Go, it also has, when you harden your home, it talks about roof materials and put screens around openings in the structures and so forth, and moving combustibles away from the home. That's one thing. Another person brought up to me about forest evacuations. I think it's very important. Southern Utah Home Forest Owners Club. Okay. Equine evac is very important. Not everyone. I mean, there's a lot of us in this valley that have animals, horses, goats, other large animals that are very important to us, and that not everyone has the capability to evacuate those animals. So I encourage those owners of horses and large animals to, form an organization like Equine Evac where they can, protect their animals. And I also know of people who in the area that have over by the prairie, where they have open space, and if you get with them, they'll, in the event of a wildfire, if you need to evacuate your horse, they'll have trailers or something. Get them to those properties that we could identify, and that way they'll be safe. Does that make sense? Okay, so anyway, I'm just kind of ranting. Sorry, thoughts. So I encourage those who have animals like this to organize and to help be able to reach out to others. Okay, a Facebook group would be a great start for that. Southern Utah Horse Owners Club. Sorry, thank you. Okay, let's see. Oh, chipping, that's the other thing that I want to talk about. May 3rd, next Saturday, we have pancake breakfast. We'll be signing, we'll have signups for chippings and we'll have that organized. John and Chris, as far as, getting those lists established and encourage those that want chipping to get their piles done, get it out to, the locations where they need to be so it's successful.
Yeah, we'll come up with a date.
Yes, and then we'll be able to come up with the date. We want to do it relatively soon because the crews get, fire season happens and they get very busy. And so it's sometimes, they may be called out for a fire, but they'll eventually come back and mitigate the hazards. I'm going to turn it
Does
over.
chipping include sagebrush?
No,
Okay.
Let's,
no, if you, well,
John, repeat the question so everybody can hear.
does it include sagebrush? And that is no. Yes,
Might give them an idea of the size of the limbs that they need to chip.
right, yeah,
Or
take,
what you're capable of chipping.
right, yeah, I mean, our chipper can take up to 15-inch logs. We're not gonna do 15-inch logs, I'll tell you that right now. Anything 4 inches and under, we'll do everything 4 inches and under. Anything over that, we ask you to do firewood or give it to a friend for fire. And that's on the brochure. Yes, Mike.
So what are the next steps to have you do your
Yeah,
assessment thing?
excellent. Yeah, that's good segue into what we. So we thought about that. So when you look at that map and some people are saying, well, that's my property. You're not going to do that on my property. That's all fine, But in order for us to expend this grant money and be effective, we need to either help treat some of your property as far as defensible space, or do the landscape level treatments if we can get some cooperation on that, or the perimeter work. The next thing will be, we'll send out a questionnaire to your emails. So make sure you're on the sign up list. Whether you agree with it or not, we want your opinion on what you could, if you will, put up with, if you'd be acceptable to doing a fuels reduction. So we'll send out a questionnaire here in the next couple of weeks and ask you for some feedback. At that time, attached to it will be a permission slip. One page of the permission slip gives us the permission to go onto the property with you. Or if you're not available, we can just take a look and just make an assessment and see how it all fits together. What we hate is postage stamp treatments. You get a treatment here, maybe one over here, and the fire wipes both of them out because there's no consistency. There's areas treated in between. So get with your neighbors and say, what can you guys deal with? What can, this is our view. It'd be great if it was consistent that way.
You have a phone number?
So we're on hold right now for assessments. That response will be something as far as the planning. So your email response to us will, include a phone number that we can call you, and we'll fit that in. There was one slide up there that you might notice. There's labels all over the 5-county area. We've got projects going like all over that 5-county area, so we'll work that in. The main concern is we come up with a process that we can address fuels on a larger scale, not just that postage stamp. Yeah.
there a plan to reach out to the vacant lot owner?
Yeah, thank you. So, Paul, your representative. House Bill 48, really, again, the rules are still being written for that. We're hoping that it includes a vacant lot assessment to those folks that don't have a structure there. Right now, it's kind of centric on structures. So we're hoping that gets modified. But that's a concern. County commissioners call those folks and make sure that they understand that is a huge problem. And it's a huge problem all over the area that we deal with. So, yes. Okay.
Do they, meaning you guys, help design water systems for fire protection using standing water on the property, such as a pool with pump systems?
Yeah, so there are sites that line that out. Chris has got to run. So I want to thank him for everything he does. So there are sites that do that. Some of the homeowners have 1,000-gallon poly tanks. The one home that you saw the fuel break and the fire burn around it, and I've said that he actually did a lot of work around his home. He has a poly tank there that has 1,000 gallons, a gas-fired pump, and he deploys sprinklers around his home, right? And so fire departments know about it. And in the event of evacuation, that gives them 2 hours of water being sprayed on his cabin. So as soon as you get that evac notice and a mandatory evacuation, fire is imminent. If you can start the pump and the water lasts, that wets your house down. It's just phenomenal what that will do. And that's a system that he came up with. But there's companies out there that design those systems. The problem, it has to be gas fired because your electricity is usually cut off pretty quick. That's one thing is firefighters can try and eliminate, unfortunately, but that dries up a bunch of wells and whatnot. What else about that? There are materials out there, thermogel, homeowner kit. So if you have big panes of glass, you can take a homeowner thermogel kit, and thermogel is just one of the brands. There's Citric. If you homeowner fire risk reduction, that type of thing, search that, it'll be out there. But thermogel I've actually done myself. We've sprayed trees right next to slash piles that were burning that we wanted to save, and it impedes that heat, and it just bubbles up, and as the heat hits those bubbles, they burst, and it protects them for about 2 hours. That 1,000-gallon tank that homeowner put in, we came in right after the fire front left and refilled that tank so it was ready for the next any embers that were. So if I was a homeowner in the middle of a PJ stand, I would have 1,000-gallon tank and a gas pump and sprinklers in key areas around my house. So,
James, this is Elliot Christensen. I had a comment on one material that's advertised.
Yeah, that's
and advertised
right,
heavily.
right. So insurance companies right now are canceling left and right. They are, and so House Bill 48 it was written with some teeth that insurance companies couldn't drop people just because they're in the wildland. Obviously, as bills go and politics go, that was watered down quite a bit. But there is a provision in there that they have to use the maps that we identify as high risk. And so if you go on URAT, you're going to see that our whole area is in high risk, or a lot of our areas are in high risk. that's gonna be narrowed down with a scientific look at it as far as what are the real risks to those areas. So they're gonna be condensed a little bit. I think we're still gonna be in a high risk, obviously, because of the thickness of the PJ. So, but yeah, insurance companies everywhere. It's not just Utah, it's every state that has a wildland urban interface. I went to a convention of wildfire convention back in 2006. We had a nationwide association of insurance companies representatives stand up in front of us and showed us a pie chart of all the disasters that they have to deal with. And he points to this one real thin strip in the pie. And he says, I want to tell you, that's wildfire. We don't have any of this. It's not, that's not the case now. You know, they're dealing with some pretty good payouts and starting to cancel people. So amongst yourselves, you know, discuss who's accepting new clients and how cheap they are if you can't afford it. So, okay. I think that's it. One more?
No more questions.
Oh, yep.
John, do you want to talk about the timeline when this is expected to happen?
Right. So again, you know, we'll send out in the next, again, please make sure that your email's on that sign-in sheet. If, and even if you don't want to participate, right? We're still interested in your opinions, whether you want to trim trees, whether you want to participate in a larger scale, you know, tell us and tell us how we can better present this, if you will. In the next couple of weeks, we'll send a letter out or an email. It'll be Blackridge fuels treatment, probably as a title. And yeah, please respond to that. And again, at the same time, that permission slip. Again, one sheet gives us permission to go on your property with you, if that's the case. The second sheet is when we come up with a scope of work, what we'd like to do, whether you permit us to do that work on your property. That could be just defensible space, and it could be larger group type treatments. All right, we ran over. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna close out real quick. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tamara Banks. I'm the one that called you, found you, got you here. Thank you all for showing up. Please take the food. I don't want to take it home. If you know somebody that wasn't here, please reach out to them with any information that you may take from this. We did record this event, so it will be on the New Harmony Fire website, which is newharmonyfire.org. And you can go on there if you want to review anything. Also, we highly recommend that you sign up for Reverse 911. If you don't know what that is, it's instead of you calling 911 saying, help me, the county will call you in a designated area that affects you and let you know what the situation is, probably evacuation. So sign up is 911register.com. And you can go on WashGov, the Washington County website, and find it there also. So we highly recommend that. It's very useful. And Mike Samish, raise your hand, please. He's responsible for kind of getting the ball rolling on this and knowing that we live in a high fire area. So any help we can get, so he knows people. So this has worked out great. Thank you, John. And also May 3rd at the fire station, we have a pancake breakfast, and it helps support our firefighters. And We will have a ton of fire information. That's where you can log in or sign in to get your chipping, if you want to have that done. And we also have the reflective address signs, and you can sign in, and it is a cost to get the sign, but you can sign in to get your sign, and we'll do the legwork to get it and get it to you somehow. Any questions for me?
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll tell you one thing, 20 years of doing this, you get to know people. And it's emotional when you see their house burned. When we have to respond to a house that you know these folks. Amazing amount of diversity of people live in this area. It blows my mind. And to get to know you and work with you is a privilege. And hopefully we get to do more. Thanks. Appreciate you coming out on Saturday. Have a good weekend.